I'll bet this has happened to you, or it happens to you all the time. Your best friend, dog or cat, just looks at you. Like they're trying to communicate something to you. That time when they get that tilt in their head and their eyes are darting right into your eyes? Or have you had those times when your pet, they look like they're not feeling really well and you just wish they could talk to you and tell you what's going on? In today's episode, Miranda Alcott, she joins me. She's a world-renowned animal-human communicator. Probably easier, she's an animal psychic. Now, prior to the recording, I had the opportunity to do a session with her and my dog Mabel. Miranda was able to communicate with her and answer some questions I had. Now, I'm not telling you any more. We'll get into this in the episode. Sadly, though, we've all had that situation where our pets have reached that time. You know the one I'm talking about, that heavy decision of saying goodbye. Now imagine this. What if you could just have a direct dialogue to find out if they were ready to go? Miranda does this. She helps our beloved pets, and just important, also it helps us in making a decision that may not be quite as tough, knowing we can find out what our furry friend has to say. Miranda is a wonderfully kind, very genuine person, and she's going to guide us in a thoughtful way to explore things many of us really don't know much about. So start thinking about those questions you have for your best friend and listen to what Miranda has to say to help enlighten all of us. We are supported by PrepVet, providing stem cell therapy for pets.
As a pet lover, did you know your pet can benefit from the incredible healing power of stem cell therapy? Prep Therapy offers a groundbreaking solution taken right from your pet's own blood. Say goodbye to joint pain, arthritis, kidney and liver conditions, and more. They'll experience faster recovery, increased vitality, and extended quality of life without the need for surgery or harmful drugs. Put the wag back in their tail and discover Prep Therapy today at prepvet.com. Save 10% with promo code FurRealPodcast, covered by most pet insurance.
For real, 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 for real. Got a bunch of furry friends and I love them all the same. I'm an animal lover, veterinarian is the name. Let's share some pet stories from heartwarming to strange. Losses and gains, from wacky to insane. For real. You're now tuned in to For Real with your host, Mark Kyle.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to the For Real Podcast. Today my guest is Miranda Alcott. She's become a good friend of mine in a very short period of time. We had a session yesterday. She's an animal communicator. Some people would say animal psychic, but wait till you meet her. She is one of the kindest people I've ever met, and we've got a big story to tell you. So Miranda, thanks so much for joining.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. This is such a wonderful opportunity. Thank you, Mark.
Well, I think it's more of a wonderful opportunity for me and the people that will be listening, because this is a tool that some people don't even know that it is available. And I really want to let's get into your background, how you got involved, when did you realize you could do this? And then let's talk about this tool. And we're going to get into my session with me and my dog towards the end. But I just want to kind of get into the background. So can you for everybody, myself and everybody listening, when did you realize you could have this communication or dialogue with animals and be able to understand it? And then how did that progress to what you're doing today?
Which lifetime?
This lifetime that we're living right now.
Okay. Well, for me, there's no cutoff in between.
Okay.
Lifetimes as far as information moving forward and all of that. So I've been doing this work for a very long time. I'm so blessed to remember and know where I was or what was happening. And so for me, when I came into my family, was born, when I was 3 years old and was talking to ladybugs and doing all kinds of things, my mom and dad, said to me, honey, that's fine, but let's keep it in the house. And at the time I thought, I'm doing something wrong. But what it was protection. my parents were protecting me. But I did feel I was doing something wrong, so I had to hide it. And it was interesting when I was 9 years old, my parents were approached by some people who got my parents involved in ASPR, which is American Society for Psychical Research. And they had this child that was very different and wanted to find out about it. So from 9 years old on, I was able to watch and learn from others because my parents ended up being on the steering committee, the board for ASPR for 17 years. And what that meant was the latest, greatest psychic, sensitive medium who came to town and wanted to show their wares, sell their books, whatever, to the huge group of followers had to prove they could do what they did. So once a month,
Mhm.
we would have someone come up to our house so that the board could see if the person really could cut it. And I was in bed, wink, wink, and behind the bookcases watching all this. And my mom would say to me, "Is this person real?" Like later, she would say, "Is he the real deal? Is she the real deal?" And I learned a tremendous amount from those people. The first thing I learned was all of them had some form of grounding issue. So they were all either overweight, diabetic, or smoked like crazy. And I took from that, okay, I'm never doing that. I'm not going to be that way. But what I didn't realize was because when I needed energy, I could actually build energy inside of me and pull it down from other sources that was good, it would help my body. I did not realize I was overloading and overriding signs from my physical body that I wasn't being respective. So, we all have things to learn taking a human involvement here.
Right, of course. Can I just interrupt you real quick for a quick question? One is, I'm assuming that most people have an intuitive sense that they probably tuned out when they were really young and don't have that. So I'm assuming everybody at some level have some of this skill. Were your parents skilled the way you are now? Or I don't know if skilled's the right word. You can tell me, and then I'll try not to interrupt. But I always have my mind goes too fast. So I apologize.
No, this is great. I love the questions. Yes, here's the challenge right now, what's happening on our planet because of the frequencies have been changing in ways that our planet and we have not experienced this in this way before. And yes, there's so many people that are now allowing themselves to listen, to feel, to sense more. So, yes, everyone has an intuition. The difference is they have to open it, they have to acknowledge it. It's there. And most people are already using it and they don't know it. I'll give you an example. I remember I was working with, I was invited to speak to a college, university president because he wanted to start a legacy of contributing to nonprofit service dogs. And I had a one on one meeting with him. And he said, I understand you do something different with animals. You do something different? And I said, yes, I listen to them. And he said, well, what does that do? How does that work? And I said, well, sir, have you ever bought a used car? And he said, yeah. I said, you know how the used car salesman, no matter what he's saying to you, he's also checking you out to figure out what will get the deal done. While he's talking, he's just checking you out. He's scanning you. And this man started to laugh and he said, I get it. And I said, that's nonverbal communication. It's telepathic. And it's also an assessment of where to take this person in front of him. So, yes, we all come in with incredible sensitivities. And depending on our cultures, we either smash it, cram it, water it, and let it grow.
Well, yeah, yeah. It's funny is one of my favorite movies are the Star Wars thing, and it's always the Force.
Yes.
And I've always believed there is some that is available out to you. And I believe in that at some level. And I'm assuming that what your ability is to tap into the Force.
So, yes, and there are so many ways of receiving information, of different forms of communication. There are different cultures involved, off planet, on planet. We have to be careful and make sure we're not limiting that the only way we can receive information is the way we as humans culturally believe it. I say that because I think if we look at basics in male humans and female humans, it's fascinating how we receive information. So it's fascinating because my experience is male humans receive information sort of left to right, left to right, left to right. As women, we are diffuse focused, which means when our guys walk in the room and they say, "Have you seen my keys?" We point behind our heads because we've seen it there. And that's also the reason when the ship goes down, we need men, because you guys know exactly what to do in that moment. So if we look at the way other things that we believe in or that we say is the force, there are several, many ways of receiving information. The force is one that helped everyone get on the same page to a certain extent and using that terminology. But there are others that carry information that come to us. For instance, I'll give you an example. I worked several years ago. What my first introduction to a canine brigade. None of them. I discovered them because this woman asked me what her dog who had deceased was doing. And this dog showed me, we pulled above the earth and moved the earth over to where we were over Africa. And the dog showed me that he was getting children to run at night for their lives, to run in the dark. The children could not see the dogs because it was dark, but they could feel them and sense them. None of these dogs were alive. And yet these children were gotten to safety. I asked more, where else is this going on? And this was incredible when I stumbled into this. And I was shown that there are different brigades of canines that work with children who have been or are physically abused in their home situation. And they work with them at night and they encourage them, they love them, they get them to see different ways of possibly leaving if they need to, how to deal with it. There are many horses that do that as well. There's so much going on this planet, Mark, and off that is integrated. That's why the force is wonderful to think about, and it is very real. But there's more than that. Sacred geometry talks about that a great deal.
I had an episode with equine therapy, and one of the things that came out was the energy, the how far the energy is from where the horse is that it radiates to these, especially these children who have special needs. But I forget how many feet away from the horse, but it's got a certain energy that helps actually calm the kids down.
Yeah, it's their etheric bodies, and we all have that. And cats,
Mhm.
their etheric bodies, they pretty much take over their entire environment. So that's why a lot of times I work with cats to prepare them for a move, because just picking up a cat and moving it is as though if you were holding on to a doorknob and someone picked you up and you didn't let go of the doorknob. It's like ripping your arm off. And that's why we have to be careful about when you talk about the feet of the energetic body. It's important what that is made up of and how it goes. So I love that you know that.
So let's go back to what we were talking about. So at 9 years old, you're talking to people, and and you're realizing this, and the different people that were diabetic or whatever. Let's move forward to how you got from 9 years old to where you are today, doing this and helping so many people and animals.
So that's a lot of years, but I'll say that when I was 9, And my parents were had taken me to these people's house, where the kid watches the TV and goes to sleep on the bed and the parents are having dinner and talking.
Right.
On the way home in the car, we had wonderful bench seats then, and I was asleep in the back seat. And my parents were arguing, and they never argued. I found out later they had agreements to never argue in front of the kids, but they were arguing. And so I sat up sleepily and I said, "What's going on?" And my mother said, "Well, Juanita tells us that she's been to Jupiter." And I said, "Well, that's no big deal." And my dad, with the brakes, pulled over to the side of the road, and both of them turned around and looked at me. And it was at that point that they realized they needed to, in some way, educate themselves more, which, by the way, would help me learn as well. So, yes, I started professionally working when I was 19. And I wanted to work with humans as a counselor. That was part of something I wanted to do. But I was told by my teachers, who were not in physical form at that point, that I said, I want to work with humans. They said, "You need to work with animals." And I said, "But I already talked to animals. The humans are the ones that need help." And they said, "Yes, but you can help more animals by working with the humans through their animals."
Oh, I love that.
And so at that point, it was when I had the goal to become a human counselor, not a therapist, but a human counselor. So I am a human counselor of communication as well with the animals.
Well, first of all, you're not telling your whole story because you have a master's. You've also helped with Columbine, and you've done the 911. Let's get into a little bit more about you, and then let's talk about how you're helping everybody.
So, yes, I did get my degree in spiritual psychology, which is a degree in psychology, and then a whole curriculum on top of that of spirituality at the University of Santa Monica. And I have been teaching for many years, many decades. And so, looking at what I could do to change or to support did become very important for me to include the humans in it. And one of the things that I really enjoyed yesterday about us working with Mabel was I in looking at her in the pictures, the two pictures you sent me, I don't work ahead of time. I don't open the pictures or questions until the human is there because I don't want the communication to start.
Right.
And sometimes animals are hesitant, sometimes they're shy, sometimes they say, "I already know what you do." Sometimes they say, "Where are you?" But what struck me yesterday was that Mabel started by saying, when I said, "How are you? And how are you working with your humans?" She said, "I'm confused." So, what I feel is true is that we have many animals that are confused because without us knowing it, we send mixed signals. That comes back to the cultures of each species we're working with and how it operates within ours or next to ours or opposite ours. And I was very excited that Mabel could relax as fast as she did and that she was willing to share as much as she did. How did you feel about what happened?
Well, I really liked it. It was interesting your process and how that works, and how she was communicating with you. And one of the things that I because I wasn't sure going into it how it was going to work and what it would do. One of the things I recognized for me and looking at other people that may be listening out there, it's a good bridge to be really to fully understand what's going through their mind and to understand everything. One of the things I thought was, and I think I may have read it on your website or read somewhere else, is that, in today's time, one of the, as parents, if you have kids, one of the big breakthroughs is when they start talking. And the way I think we as humans now, animals have become more and more part of the family, and they're like children for many people.
Yes.
And I think the tool that you're giving to everybody are the translator. How about that? Let's use that word. The translator to be able to have them communicate to you becomes a big breakthrough for everybody too. So I would assume that, as for me, it was good. It was helpful to understand some of the ways she does things. But I think for anybody else that would be working with somebody like yourself, it's that breakthrough to have some real communication, even though maybe intuitively you may know, but it's maybe an affirmation of what you maybe already kind of know. Does that make sense?
That's true. That's true. People will say, I always felt that, or I wondered about that. And it's true. Telepathic communication is straight ahead. And so it's in real time. And being able to have real time conversations is so key and so important to between the animal and the human to build a stronger bond simply by taking the time to listen to each other.
Right.
And so yeah, that's good. Yeah, I'm glad that you felt that. I'm glad that you assessed that. Yeah.
Well, I think what's interesting about it is too, is if you really think about it, just a human relationship, it always comes down to communication. So if you can actually enhance the communication with your pet who's now part of your family, the same thing goes for that as well, I would guess.
Yes. And that's why a lot of people take my courses because they want to have a better understanding of what's going on with their animal. Now, if we take that further, it is really important to understand why your animal is behaving it is. I'll tell you, at one point, a woman contacted me because she couldn't understand why in the middle of the night her dog would try to wake her up or try to nudge her. And she said, I've got teenagers. I need my sleep. Miranda, you have to tell her not to do this. But when I asked this dog what she was doing, the dog showed me the teenagers are leaving the house at night.
Oh, wow, that's crazy.
Yeah. When I told this woman, she said, "You just changed my life. Thank you. Oh my God, thank you." So that's what I'm saying. There are things going on that they're aware of that we are not, that are very important. I was working with someone yesterday who is working with some medical challenges. And I noticed the energetic of him had changed significantly from last week when we worked together. And so what I sensed and noticed was that his scent for me, if an energetic scent, had changed. And I asked him if any of his medications had changed, and he said yes. And I said, that's something you need to talk to your doctor about. Because what's happening in your body is it is interfering with your communication with your so and so. And he said, "Thank you. That's really helpful." So I'm stating these things, Mark, because I want to offer how much and how we can use this if we limit it to animals. There are people who come into the courses and they had no idea they could communicate with reptiles consciously. There are people who come in that love communicating with stones, with dirt, with trees,
Right.
whatever. And so it's more giving ourselves permission to allow ourselves to listen. This is starting. That's the starting point.
Well, one of the things, and I think again, this is your website because I was digging around all over the place about communicators, and one thing that I'm absolutely positive of is animals really understand energy and understand things. As an example, in a different way, but similar. If there's some like a fire coming, all the animals know right away, and they're leaving the forest right away. But they also tend to know if they live with humans, they know that there's maybe something like just like you're talking about that they're going through. So I guess as a perception from my perspective is that you're thinking about, okay, I want to know what they're thinking, but maybe what they're doing, they're there to communicate to you to help you get through whatever you may have going on personally. And I know we've talked about end of life on animals, and I want to get to that, by the way. But so I guess in looking at it differently, you could look at it as, yeah, I want to know what they're thinking, but maybe what they're trying to do is communicate to us to tell us, hey, you're really like one of the things you mentioned to me yesterday. she's really stressed because she thinks you're really stressed.
Yeah.
And so, could you expand upon not necessarily about Mabel, but, what you've been able to find and help people with as well?
Well, but let me just jump a little backwards there. She didn't say she's really stressed because she thinks you're really stressed. She said you're really stressed.
Uh-huh.
There's a big difference there. So let's talk about politics. What do we think happens on our planet when all of a sudden someone drops out of a race, someone else steps in? In our country, there is a wave of energetic that changes, and it can be rough because it's not all one smooth situation.
Mhm.
When we went into COVID, I watched so many animals. I watched circling our planet like we think of a swell of energy going around our planet. It affected everything and everyone on our planet. So when your dog says to you, she knows you're stressed and she says you're tired. I can't remember exactly right now the rest that she said there, but it is for you to then take a look at your life and say, what do I need to change? Different from, oh, that's so sweet. Can you take care of me? No, she's a teacher,
Right.
and she's saying, I'm giving you information. It's up to you what you do with it.
Yeah. I find that really fascinating. And again, I think that, as you know, animals tend to like certain people and don't like other people, right? And
Yep,
and I always wondered about that, and that's basically my assumption without science is that it's a different energy that you're propelling.
absolutely. We talk about, the biochemistry changing, which I mean, I love seizure alert dogs.
Right.
Yeah, and MDs, which are multiple disability service dogs. They know when their human is changing. They know how to get them onto the ground. They know how to lay on top of them if they're PTSD, and that is what calms them. So yeah, they're working full time, and that's why it's good. Yeah,
Well, it's funny is I had an episode with those dogs about those dogs, and one of the stories they came across, this woman had gotten a dog. She had epilepsy, and she had just got the dog. There's early on in training because they go through a big training process.
right.
She was given a bath to her newborn baby in the bathtub, and the dog was jumping all over. And she's going, "What is the dog doing?" She ends up pulling the baby out, putting it into bassinet or whatever, and had a seizure. And if that dog had not done that, who knows what have happened? But that dog, they know ahead of time, and they had not because the owner and the dog have to go through training so they understand each other. And she didn't understand everything because it was early on, but the dog knew right away and did a pretty amazing thing.
Yeah, which is incredible. Yes, I have
Yeah.
lots of people doing that, which is incredible. And what I say to remind people, remember that there's a third eye that is very stronger than the two eyes we think of, and that's the nose. I remember attending a lecture, someone who was talking about how can science tell us how far dogs smell scent, and they finally came up. I think it was about 8 years ago. Science came up with a description of it
Hmm.
that. Especially with bloodhounds, but with all dogs, it's extraordinary because they have three systems in their physical bodies of how to scent. They said if we could see as far as dogs smell, we'd be able to see from Los Angeles to New York. That's 3,000 miles of information. So I had a gentleman call me a while ago saying, I don't know what to do with my dog. I don't know what his problem is, but I have to test my blood, and I have to prick my finger, and I go into the bathroom and prick my finger, and my dog goes crazy outside. And I said, outside, what do you mean? He said, Miranda, I'm pricking my finger in the bathroom, but the door's closed. And I said, there's no there. So that's what I'm saying, understanding how sensitive they are. And yes, I'm on my fourth service dog, real service dog, and she came to me with over 2,000 hours of training. This is not a backyard service dog. These are real service dogs, and the seizure alert and the PTSD dogs. All of these dogs are hardworking, as you know. You've interviewed them. They're incredible.
Well, it's funny. I was telling somebody it was a joke the other day. Was I was at an event and they listened to the podcast, and it was a friend of mine's wife, and I said, "Do you know why dogs actually stick their head out the window?" And she said, "No, why?" I said, "Because when you're driving, their sense of smell is so good, it's almost like they're getting high off of it. They're literally sticking their head out the window because it's a sensory thing that they're just loving it." I said, "So if you ever see me driving with my head out the window, you'll know why." It was a joke, but but it was relating to, I forget what I think 8 times or 16 times stronger than a human or something crazy amount. It's an amazing amount.
Oh, yeah, no, that's why they had to say from because they couldn't figure out. I mean, we've been through the
Yeah.
statement that it's a million times more and all that. But and cats are actually 60% of what dogs can scent. They blow us out. We're nothing in comparison to cats and dogs
Wow.
as far as they scent. Yeah, what they can scent in real time. Yeah. Well, and every animal, every being, every insect, everything has a way of giving back information. We just have to be open to it if we choose to.
I was gonna ask you about one of the things I read on your website was, FFP, the full body, frequency
Yeah.
perceptives. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, full body frequency is if we think about, for instance, if you're working with from a human counseling standpoint, I'll start there. If someone is very tense, sometimes when I work with them and we get into it, I ask them to tell me where they feel that tension. Then I will ask them to place a mouth and that part of their body is so they're visualizing it to let go of that stress and that tension. And it's remarkable what people do when this happens. But if you look at our bodies as being what we would say, maybe antennae, um, but in so many different ways, sound and parapsychological ways. It opens up every pore. It opens up senses beyond this physical being just to receive information. So instead of limiting ourselves that, well, we have five senses, six sense, blah, 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 when we get over that, we start picking up a lot more information. And yes, there are reasons to learn about boundaries and be clear about it. But full body resonance is what part of your body are you picking up on? What is this? And I have in the classes and courses that I teach, we work with that because it is an instrument that can be used respectfully.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things I'd like to get into end of life for animals. A lot of people come to you when they've got an animal that's quite sick. And can you go dig into that a little bit so you can explain the benefit for us humans out there and for the animals as well? It's what you're able to tap into and help the communication process on that.
Surely. So many times we have animals that become ill, and they all do at some point before they transition have something that is pulling them in a different direction. It can be challenging because we may be so close we're not noticing it. And I will share with you that many years ago, someone said to me, I had been doing animal communication work and human work with humans not in body and all that since I was 19. And I think it was about 27. And this person walked up to me and said in one of the classes and said, can you just communicate in real time with your own animal?" And I said, "Yeah." And this person said, "So would you know if they were sick?" And I said, "Oh yeah." I mean, my ego was gigantic. "Yeah, of course. Oh yeah." And it was about 2 weeks later. all of a sudden, I looked at my dog and realized she was really sick, and I had missed it. And that was what started me on the journey of, why did I miss this? When we love so carefully and so deeply, we're not as objective as we like to think we are. So, yes, a good amount of the work that I do has to do with animals that are sick, and their humans want to know, is it time?
Right.
And do I need to help them to leave their bodies? And I remember years ago a man saying to me, "Oh yeah, right. Like an animal's gonna say they want to be put to death." And I said, "Actually, no, they don't say that. They say they want to be released because of their suffering,
Right.
their frustration." It comes down to, are we willing to say that if the animal says yes and I need help to go, can we do that? Because if we can't, we should not ask that question. It's the ultimate sucker punch. And many times it comes down to, but I don't know what I'd do without him. I can't see my life without her. And that's where, as a human counselor, I work, because we need to look respectfully at the quality of life that that animal has. And yes, it's hard. Yes, it is challenging. But when we talk about really loving someone, we have to look at, what are we asking them to go through? And are we asking them to go through something for our benefit as opposed to what they would want?
Well, one of the things, I think it may have been another podcast that you've been on, I think, and one of the things you were saying is, oftentimes when you're communicating with these animals, they're saying they're hanging on for the human, not for themselves, because the human couldn't handle it, right?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And that happens. And I will share with you that that is between those two beings, that dog and that human.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I was thinking about a story actually yesterday of a client, a person who called me, and she said she was so stressed because she felt it was time for her cat to transition, and she took the cat to the vet and said that it was time, and she knew to let her cat go. And the vet said, "No, you should keep this cat longer." And the cat lasted 12 days suffering until it went into a seizure, and she grabbed the cat to take it to a different vet to euthanize, and the cat died in her arms before they could get there.
Oh,
I asked her, "How do you feel about that?" And she said, "Miranda, that happened 17 years ago, and it's as though it was yesterday."
yeah. It's terrible.
That's the thing that we need to get in and release and work with, because if we can do it in real time, nobody has to suffer like that. We're allowed to ask.
Well, and having that you as a translator to be able to help get that information to you, because and anybody who's ever owned a pet, the hardest thing ever in the world is to make that decision, right? And so, being able to have a line of communication or a direct dialogue, is I guess is a good word, to be able to know that, so to help you make that decision, even though they're ready to have that decision as well.
Well, it's their decision from my perspective. I've had animals come into my practice that were on three legs, could not see, and could barely hear. And you make the assumption, okay, obviously it's time for this animal, to transition. And they say, "Nope, not ready yet." And then I've had other animals coming in, I don't want to say skipping in, but they come in and they say, "Get me out of here. This cancer's eating me alive."
Yeah. Yeah, what I meant by that is the human figuring it out, not so much the animal, giving them the permission to let themselves make their decision, to let the animal make their decision, I guess. In a weird way of saying what you just said.
No, you're saying it very accurately. They have to be ready
Uh-huh.
to allow the human and the animal to have the conversation and to hear their animal say that. Yeah, I have very strict boundaries about that, because it's not fair to say to someone, "Are you suffering?" "Yes." "Do you need help to leave your body?" "Yes." "When do you want to leave?" "Tomorrow." And when do you want to leave? And the animals say, "Tomorrow," and have the human say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I can't do that." Well, then why did you ask?
Exactly.
It's the ultimate punch. Yeah.
Yeah. You told me that story about the Ukraine, the dog from Ukraine. Could you repeat that story for the listeners to hear? Because I think it's a great story for people to get a bigger grasp of what you're able to do for others.
Thank you. It was very moving for me. So this dog, when I was contacted by the person who had her, or had him, I guess it was male dog, this woman knew that her dog was aging and sick and possibly within a month or so would need to leave its body. This woman was driving around on the East Coast. She was a salesperson, and so she had her dog in the back of her car going absolutely everywhere with her. So they were a great team, very close. So she said, "Could you communicate and ask if she's ready to go?" I guess it was a female. Ask if she's ready to go, and is there anything she needs before she goes that I can do for her? And the animal opened up right away and said that she knew she needed to go soon because she wanted to catch up with her previous boy. And she was talking about a human. So I asked the woman, this obviously this is a rescue. She said, yes, I just had her maybe 3 years. She said, I got her from Ukraine when the war first started, I guess 2 years. And she said they were shipping animals here. And I saw a picture of her and I adopted her right away. So I said to this dog, what human is it that you need to catch up with? And this dog showed me a picture of the house it was in with a boy that looked like a teenager to me, but he'd been with this boy. This dog had been with this boy for a number of years. It was like they grew up together. So he showed me in this living room the humans that were in the living room was this boy, but was no longer a boy. He was wearing a uniform, and there were maybe 5 or 6 men in this what we would call a living room, but there was no furniture. They were all in uniform and they were pacing. And I could tell from what they were communicating that they were trying to make decisions in acts of war. In other words, what moves do we make? What do we do? And this dog made it clear that the transition out of body was imperative because she needed to go be with her boy who was now a man.
Right.
This woman, the human who had this wonderful dog, um, understood that, and it was I think maybe 2 weeks after that, and she contacted me right away and said, we helped her leave her body. Can you tell me where she is? And I asked that dog to show me. That dog was in the same living room, not in physical form, and there all the 6 people were there, but only one of them was still in physical form. They had all passed.
Yeah. And I meant to ask you that yesterday. So you're able to communicate with animals once they've transitioned.
Yeah, posthumously, yes.
Yeah, yeah. I don't. Those are big words for me to say. So once they transition, it's big enough for me.
Yeah, no, that's the point. It's post. They're yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's an amazing story. Do you have another stories that? And the reason why I'm asking for this is, I think when you hear the stories, then if you're somebody who is looking for something, these stories help you understand better what they would do if they were working with you. Do you have another story that comes to mind? If not, no big deal. But if you do, that'd be great.
Yeah, no, there's one that's coming to mind now about a cat.
Okay.
This woman called me and said, will you please tell my cat that the reason we're doing the subcutaneous fluids, which is injection of fluid under the skin, we have to do that because it helps him, sorry, uh, be healthier. And she said, will you ask him, does he like it? And he said, no, he didn't like it. But he understood what she was saying. So he was going to try to put up with it. And she said, well, I just think it's time for him to go, that I think he needs to go. And he said soon he would like to go. Well, she kept pushing, you have to do the sub Qs. And I said, let me just let you know that a body that needs sub Qs truly needs them, and you don't want to just stop. because what it does to the physical body now is very, very hard on that body. It's suffering. Okay. So she returned later and she said the animal had passed. And I said, okay. And she said, and I just stopped the sub Qs and I had him for a couple of months later. It was no big deal. And I'm thinking, whoa. So she said, I want to know what he says. I want to know what he says because, he said he would come and visit me after he passed, and he hasn't. And I want to know what he says. So I thought, well, this will be interesting to see if the cat even shows up, you know. Well, the cat showed up.
That's cool.
And after the woman stopped ranting, he said, I'll make you a deal. You come here and light a fire, and I'll come and see you where you are. And I tell that story, it's a teaching story, because unless we are realistic about what we are asking and not so human centered and focused that ours is the only reality, we're not really leaving options for our animals to contact us. I can't tell you how many people have told me after their animals have passed, they could feel a tail hit the back of the calf of their leg, and they turned around because they were sure their dog was there and he wasn't, or they feel them jump on the bed. There's so many times we just have to understand we have to let them communicate in the ways they can. Not he needs to look like this and he needs to do that. And, if he's really here, he needs to tell me. It's like, knock it off. If you really want to hear from your animal, be willing to listen.
Well, that's everything in life at the end of the day. That's crazy. One thing I want to get into, I forgot to talk to you about this yesterday. You've got a chapter in Masaru Emoto's book, The Healing Power of Water. I'm a big proponent of his other book, The Hidden Messages in Water. I read it a long time ago, and I keep that one because, the crystals and all that kind of stuff. Can you tell me, one is, so it's a weird thing because I looked a little bit about the book, is they talk about the power of salt water. And when I'm a big beach person, I was probably a fish at one point. But anyways, anytime I'm around salt water, if I'm at some place, a resort or whatever, it drives my kids crazy. If I'm in the water, I don't take a shower. I'm the last person to leave. I go out in the water because I want to take all that energy back home with me. I know it's weird, but it's just how I've always felt like I needed it. Can you talk about that book and your chapter in the book and what it covers? Because I haven't read it, and I'm definitely going to get it and read it.
Oh, you've done your homework. Thank you. Masaru, an incredible person. Yes, in that chapter, I talk about listening to water. And, there was a gentleman that I was working with who was, let me think if I can remember, he was diagnosed with a very serious illness. And he did not want to do all of the chemicals and the things they were suggesting. And so he was asking me, what can I do? And I said, water will help you, definitely help you. So he took it upon himself to float every day. These people had, I believe, a saltwater pool. And so he took it upon himself to float every day. And I think it was about 6 months I heard from him again that he went back, and the doctors were appalled because they didn't understand how the cancer that he was diagnosed with was no longer there. And one of the things I shared with him is, Cherokee, the Cherokee people, the word that they have for water is long person.
Really?
Yes. Now, when you think about what do dogs do when they get near water, the first thing they do is either give it the play stance or bite it.
Right. Wow. That's crazy. I never thought about that.
Yeah. So it doesn't surprise me. The other thing too, though, about you, Mart, is because of the work that you shared with me that you do for crisis response in very heavy situations, and we have that in common, it makes sense to me that you would be drawn to salt. It makes sense to me that you would need that as a healing property. And I don't know what your land or where you are is like, but if you could get to a saltwater pool, hopefully one that did not have a lot of people in it, that would be really good for your body.
Oh, I'm sure. One of my theory, and it's not science, is that when you're in the ocean, it's all this other energy that's in there for all the people that have been there, the animals, and all this other stuff. And I always believe that it rejuvenates me every time I'm there. It just does. So whether or not if there's any science behind it, doesn't matter because it makes me feel better.
Good. And really, isn't that science?
Yeah, well, that's my science.
Well, it's your field research.
Yeah,
You know, it's like using a pendulum or anything. Yes, no. Does it work for you?
yeah.
And it works for you. Yeah.
I can tell you that it's absolutely true. If you've ever talked to all three of my kids, we used to have a place down in Mexico on the water. And we'd be time to go, and everybody'd be waiting for me because I know I got to go out in the ocean before we leave. And I would never take a shower. I always say, I want to take it home with me. And that's what I would do. And then when I get home, I take a shower. But I drove my kids crazy. They were ready to go. And I went, no, I'm not ready yet. It's complete opposite when it was. But I said, no, no, you got to get in the water. Okay. Then it got to a point, okay, dad's got to go in the water first and then we can go. It's pretty funny.
I love that. That's great.
Okay, so let's do this. Can I know your website, but I know you do sessions over the internet and all that. How can people get a hold of you, your social media and all that? And then we'll get into, my favorite ending of the show. But let's talk about how people can learn more about you, learn what you're doing, how to get a hold of you, all that kind of stuff.
So the easiest way is to go to my website. If you're interested in taking a course, the courses are 6 2-hour classes. The sixth class is 3 hours. You can go to MirandaAlcottCourses.com and find all about it on the landing page there. If you're interested in having an appointment, Miranda Alcott, and you'll see descriptions of different kinds of appointments, whether it's behavioral or health or posthumous, meaning the animal's already passed. They're on social media. It's Miranda Alcott. And so if you're interested, you can send us an email, mirandaalcott@gmail, saying you want to be put on our newsletter. And that's when we advertise when we have a special. And actually, it's rare that I have a special, but we are going to be having one in the month of August,
Oh, perfect.
which is 25% off. Yeah. So 25% off. You can send us an email saying you want to be on the newsletter, and then you'll get a link. So just Miranda Alcott at Gmail, and you'll get a link. Now, you buy it in August, but you don't have to use it until I think the November. I think you can use it up until November, so you can buy ahead, is what I'm saying.
Well, the other thing is too, is I'm just literally thinking when we're talking, you could gift it to somebody as well.
Absolutely. Yes, I have gift certificates as well.
And one thing I want to mention too, so to mention that book that you've got a whole chapter in it. It's called The Healing Power of Water, and you've got a chapter, and so it helps people to get to know you a little bit that way as well.
Well, I will share with you that there are a couple of other ways.
Okay.
There is a wonderful network called Gaia, GAIA, which is like Netflix, but it's all about spirituality and off planet and on planet. It's pretty progressive. And I was involved in a series called Superpower. Superpower is a series of 12 episodes of people who are professional intuitives. Mine is the fourth episode, half an hour. There's an episode about children reading with their eyes blindfolded, with their fingertips. There's all kinds of wonderful things there to try. Then the other place you might look is Almost 30, on any of the
Podcast.
podcasting, right? And then the third one is Jeffrey Mishlove. And if you go to YouTube and type in the words Mishlove, Mishlove, and Alcott, Alcott, there are 8 half-hour episodes there talking all about this. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we could probably talk about this all day because I've got a million questions. I definitely I love stories, so I want to hear all the stories. One of I thought about this earlier, and I forgot to ask you this. So, when you're communicating with animals, are you like even when you're walking down the street hearing animals talk, or do you have to actually have open a portal kind of thing? How does that work?
Oh, that's a great question. What I work with the students on doing is creating boundaries that are healthy, because it's not about diminishing your own energy because you're getting involved with everything that you're hearing, with everything that you're doing. And I had to learn this. I had to learn this as a kid because I was so excited about everything that I was just hanging with the trees and the ladybugs and the frogs and the fish and the turtles and the whatever. But I had to learn that because I was here and my purpose was to support them and the humans, I needed to then have clear boundaries. So when I first started working at 19 professionally and charging, I would have people say, Miranda, you know what? Just let me know if my animal gets a hold of you. And I had to learn to say no.
Mhm.
When I'm working, I'm working. When I'm not, I need replenishing, healing, and I don't drain. I learned how to do that over the years. It's a different way of becoming involved, but it is a choice. So, for instance, I was blessed and was able to respond as a volunteer to 9/11 at Ground Zero with the men and women on site. I made it very clear before I left that I was not, because boom, a bunch of people who had transitioned wanted to get a hold of me to get a hold of their people. I made it very clear, no, you need to get your people to me. Because see, that's and then that means those humans are ready to hear. If they're not, one of the things that I'm very clear about is it's important to me. You don't do it just because you can. That's overstepping boundaries and it's not respectful. I know people when they first start learning animal communication, some of them, the students will come up to me and say, wow, this woman was walking down the street, with her dachshund. And I told her, your dog needs so-and-so. And the woman got really mad. I said, well, yeah, just because you can doesn't mean you should. You need to be asked.
Right. Well, that makes sense. You know, I always tell the term, it sounds simple, but simple is the hardest thing to do. But that makes total sense to me.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, okay. Wow. I'm glad you asked that.
Yeah, well, I'm glad I did then too. So here we are now. So as everybody that knows that listens, at the end of the show, I always have a guest or myself tell an animal joke. And if you, Miranda, you've got one. So if you could tell one, I'd really appreciate it. And then we'll close up the show. Go ahead.
I actually have a couple. Am I allowed to tell a
Well,
couple?
you can, the more the merrier.
Okay, all right. So this woman contacted me and said she was living in Hawaii. She was very socially active at night, and all that. And what upset her was her cat would go on a walkabout and not come home at night, and it would scare her to death. She would get home late and scare her to death. So she asked me, will you please ask my cat, would you like to be out all day? Then can you just come home and stay home at night? And his response was, can you?
Exactly.
I loved it.
That's a great one.
Yeah. And she was a little dumbfounded and realized she needed to change the way she was thinking about it.
It sounds like me talking to my children. Tell
Oh, tell me.
you. A crazy one. What's your other one?
The other one is a woman who was diagnosed with cancer and was pretty sick. And her cat was diagnosed and was very ill. And the first thing he said to her is, you stop worrying. It takes energy and it doesn't make any sense. It does nothing for us. And I said to him, your human is very brave. And he said, what? And I said, your human is very brave. And he said, well, I wouldn't refer to her like that. I said, well, how would you refer to her? He said, mine. Not his human.
Well, that's what Mabel told you yesterday too, that I was hers.
Yeah, there you go.
Exactly.
Yep.
Okay, so anyways, thanks for doing that. So everybody that's out there listening, as we all know, to keep me, if I don't have a guest that's going to tell a joke, because generally they're always better than mine, please have, if you've got a child that wants to tell a joke, you've got a relative that wants to tell a joke, or you've got a joke, if you can email me at mkyle@forrealpodcast.com, please do it. One, I will get back to you, and I promise you, you'll be on the show. And also for everybody that's listening, if you've got great content like Miranda here, and you want to either you've got something you want to talk about, or you know somebody you thought would be a really good guest, again, email me at mkyle@forrealpodcast.com. It's really important to me, and obviously keep following all that stuff. But lastly, Miranda, thanks so much. You've got a great message out there for everybody. It's a tool, or I don't even know if that tool is a good word for it. It's something for people that everybody, if you want to have good communication and understand things better, I think what you're offering is a wonderful thing for everybody out there that's a pet owner. But thanks so much for taking the time to be on for me. I really appreciate it.
Oh, it's just been a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me. I feel honored by your inviting me. So thank you. And yes, we all can do this. We just have to work on it.
Yeah, and and just to address something that Miranda and I were talking before we came on is, I've had an opportunity to get to know her better. What a really kind person for everybody. So if you really want to get a hold of her, you're going to find really what a pleasure, and it'll be something that you'll be really pleased that you did. And then for everybody else that's out there listening, as always, thanks so much for listening. Keep following, pass the word out, because obviously it helps me, and I just really appreciate everybody from the bottom of my heart. For real.
Woohoo!
We're supported by Let's Walk, that's here to love your animals like our own.
Austin, Houston, and Denver. Let's Walk is here to love your animals like our own. From daily walks, play, in-house sleepovers, and more. Go to work, out on the town, or take a vacation knowing your pets are in the best hands. This woman-owned small business does it all. Check us out on Instagram at Let's Walk Austin, Houston, and Denver.
That concludes this episode of For Real with your host, Mark Kyle. For previous and future episodes of For Real, listen via all major podcast streaming sites.